Imagine a field choked with mud and blood where the impossible became reality, a vastly outnumbered force on the brink of collapse, facing an unstoppable tide of chivalry. This is the story of Agincourt, 1415, the day 6,000 longbowmen defied all odds. Welcome, history enthusiasts, to a cinematic journey back to one of the most stunning military upsets ever recorded. The year is 1415. Europe is in turmoil. The 100 Years' War, a brutal dynastic struggle, rages on. England, under its ambitious young king, Henry V, sought to reclaim ancestral lands in France. His primary target, the strategic port of Harfleur, a vital gateway to Normandy. The siege was long and costly, taking its toll on Henry's already weary army. Disease, dysentery, and dwindling supplies plagued the English ranks. Harfleur fell, but at a terrible price. With winter approaching and his forces weakened, Henry made a daring decision: march to Calais. A grueling 250-mile journey through hostile French territory. A desperate gamble. The French, recovering from their earlier defeats, saw an opportunity to intercept and annihilate Henry's retreating army. They assembled a formidable force, vastly outnumbering the English. French pride demanded retribution. By late October, the two armies were on a collision course near the village of Agincourt. Henry's army, now barely 6,000 strong, faced a French host estimated at 25,000 to 30,000. The English were exhausted, hungry, and demoralized. Many suffered from dysentery and fatigue. Yet Henry V, a king renowned for his courage and leadership, rallied his band of brothers. He reminded them of their honor, their cause, and the glory that awaited them. The French, conversely, were overconfident. They envisioned an easy victory against a crippled foe. Their grand army, composed of the flower of French nobility, believed chivalry alone would carry the day. But the battlefield itself would prove to be one of the English's greatest allies. The field of Agincourt was a narrow bottleneck, flanked by dense woods on either side. Recent heavy rains had turned the ground into a treacherous, ankle-deep quagmire. This muddy terrain would be a significant factor, slowing down heavy cavalry and dismounted knights. Henry V, ever the brilliant tactician, positioned his longbowmen strategically along the flanks. They hammered sharpened stakes, known as palings, into the ground, creating an impenetrable barrier against cavalry. His dismounted knights and men-at-arms formed a compact, resilient center. The French deployed their vast army in dense, unwieldy lines, one behind the other, exacerbating the narrow field problem. Their cavalry wings, intended for flanking maneuvers, were hampered by the woods and mud. The morning of October 25th dawned cold and drizzly. Both armies faced each other in a tense standoff. Hours passed in eerie silence, broken only by the occasional neigh of a horse or the rustle of armor. Neither side wanted to make the first move, knowing the energy drain of crossing the muddy expanse. Finally, Henry V, recognizing his men's desperate need of action, gave the order to advance. The English advanced a mere 200 yards, planting their stakes and bringing the French within longbow range. The French, infuriated by this audacity, unleashed their initial cavalry charge. But the ground was their enemy. Horses struggled, losing momentum, creating a chaotic muddle. Then the English longbowmen unleashed hell. Thousands of arrows darkened the sky. Each arrow, a formidable piece of medieval engineering, could pierce armor at close range. The sheer volume of fire was terrifying, described as a storm of deadly hail. The first wave of French knights, already bogged down, were decimated before reaching the English line. Many horses, panicked and wounded, turned back, crashing into the advancing French infantry. The French vanguard, dismounted knights and men-at-arms, began their agonizing advance. Weighed down by their heavy armor, Every step was a monumental effort in the thick mud. They became a slow-moving target, trapped in a killing zone created by the terrain and English archery. As they finally reached the English line, they were exhausted, breathless, and riddled with arrows.
The narrow frontage meant only a fraction of the French army could engage the English simultaneously.
The sheer weight of numbers became a liability as fresh troops pushed against exhausted ones. The English men-at-arms, fresh and disciplined, met the depleted French with fierce determination. Then, in a decisive move, the Longbowmen, having exhausted their arrows, joined the melee. Armed with secondary weapons, they were surprisingly effective, targeting gaps in French armor. The battle turned into a brutal, grinding struggle in the mud, a slaughterhouse of chivalry. French knights, trapped by their own numbers and the terrain, became easy prey. They added to the crushing pressure on the front, deepening the disaster for their compatriots. The English, however, maintained discipline, adapting to the changing dynamics of the fight. Casualties mounted rapidly for the French. Knights suffocated in their own armor, drowning in the mud. Their grand banners, once flying high, now lay trampled in the mire.
Panic began to spread through the French ranks as their lines began to buckle.
Many noblemen were captured, but the battle was far from over. A critical moment arose when French rearguard units, perhaps attempting a flanking move, attacked the English baggage train. This threatened the English rear and caused Henry V to issue a controversial, grim order. He ordered the execution of French prisoners, a shocking, brutal act, but a strategic necessity. With the threat of a renewed attack and too few men to guard the captives, Henry prioritized his army's survival. The French third line, seeing the catastrophe unfolding, largely refused to advance. By late afternoon, the battle was over. The field of Agincourt was littered with the dead. The scale of the French defeat was staggering. Thousands of French noblemen and soldiers lay dead. Among the casualties were many high-ranking dukes, counts, and princes of France. The flower of French chivalry had been utterly annihilated by a smaller, sicker English army. English losses, though not negligible, were remarkably light in comparison. Agincourt was a testament to Henry V's leadership, English discipline, and the devastating power of the longbow. It marked a turning point in military history, demonstrating the obsolescence of massed heavy cavalry against well-deployed archers. The battle severely crippled France's nobility and paved the way for the Treaty of Troyes, which briefly saw Henry V declared regent and heir to the French throne. But the true legacy of Agincourt lies in its powerful message. Even against impossible odds, strategy and innovation can triumph. The muddy field became a symbol of English resolve and French hubris. The longbow, once a humble weapon, earned its place as a legend in the annals of warfare. Agincourt reminds us that history is often shaped not by the largest armies, but by the sharpest minds. A battle fought on a small strip of land, yet echoing through centuries. The heroism and horror of that fateful day continue to captivate and educate. The sheer audacity of King Henry V, leading his broken men against insurmountable odds, is an inspiration. And the incredible resilience of the English archers, masters of their craft, secured their place in legend. The Battle of Agincourt, a story of courage, cunning, and the ultimate triumph of the underdog. Its lessons in warfare, leadership, and human endurance remain profoundly relevant even today. Thank you for joining us on this historical journey. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates.